Thank you for tuning in to the Natty News Daily podcast. This episode is brought to you in part by our sponsor, Core Nutritionals. You can check out corenutritionals.com for all your supplement needs and use code Natty News Daily at checkout to save 20%. Enjoy the episode.
What's going on, people? Welcome to an impromptu episode of the Natty News Daily podcast. Dan and I here recording on a Sunday afternoon because what else would we be doing on a Sunday afternoon but talking about bodybuilding gossip? So I'm going to screen share if I can figure out how. Dan, how the hell do I do this? Screen share.
You just hit record. You're like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, let's just go. Here we go.
Here we
All
go.
right. Can you see this? Okay. So we are on the Natty News Daily page. Shout out to us for hitting 20.7K followers yesterday. That's pretty cool.
It's nice.
We're climbing. We're climbing.
Especially in a kind of a quote unquote slow period right now.
Yeah. There's obviously not a whole lot going on. So for us, we're trying to stay up to date with news and obviously keep the podcast going until the show season kicks off here. Most of the season around the world starts around March, April. So there will be plenty to talk about here in the next couple of months. But we're gonna pull this up because this popped up yesterday. For me, anyways. I don't know when this actually went live. Oh, a day ago, and that was yesterday. So this probably was posted on Friday through Hani Rambod's YouTube channel. And it's a chat with Tyler Mannion, who's the vice president of the NPC. And on this podcast, the subject matter of natural bodybuilding come up and the natural stream within the NPC and what things are going to look like in the future and the potential of that within the NPC. And there's been a lot of rumblings kind of in the circle that we are in within the bodybuilding world about some changes coming down the pipeline, and it actually looks like a lot of things are going to be changing quicker than potentially we thought. So on this podcast, and I quoted it right in this post because I didn't want there to be any miscommunication. And when the subject of the Ben Weiders come up, which for those that don't know, the Ben Weiders is a pro-am show in, I think, Virginia is where it's held. Basically, amateurs can compete and earn their IFBB pro card and then compete as a pro. It's an IFBB pro show. And outside of men's and women's bodybuilding, all overall winners in the pro show do qualify for the Olympia. So for a natural athlete, this is kind of as it stands right now, your ticket to the Olympia. But with it being within the NPC and the IFBB and stuff like that, there was obviously concern about drug testing and what that standard was going to look like, and who's tested, how are they testing, how many athletes are tested, all those questions that the natural community is kind of wondering. And last year actually there was an athlete who was competing in wellness in the Ben Weiders, and she got kind of called out online with regards to her natty status. And, she basically admitted that, I'm doing this show. I'm not a lifetime natural athlete. And when people called her out on it, she's like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to do what I want to do, which obviously caused a stir. And she ended up not competing in the event, which is good to see. And I think that's where social media can kind of be a good thing, because when people are passionate about something, they can voice their opinions and share their thoughts. And obviously it kind of drove her out of the event, that most people competing are probably ideally lifetime natural athletes, and when you have someone coming in that's not, then it kind of taints the natural status of the show. So anyways, here we are on this podcast, and Hani asked Tyler about the drug testing, and in his quote, "Is that urine? Is that how they're testing it?" Tyler responds, "It's been urinalysis, but we're going to do urinalysis combined with polygraph testing as well." So, this is something we've talked about for quite some time now with the NPC, with the Ben Weiders, and if they were going to implement polygraph like a lot of other natural organizations do, and if that was going to be something that they were going to follow through with, and it seems like they're kind of going down that route. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah, so we've talked about it prior about testing protocols within the NPC IFBB for their natural shows has been sometimes questionable. You've got some athletes that are either questionable themselves or have admitted to taking things in the past, or there's some sketchy stuff that's gone on. But a lot of that has been, product of people being able to skirt around testing. I don't know how much testing they're doing, but even with the testing, they were just doing urinalysis and basically peeing clean on the day, right?
Yeah.
So the inclusion of the polygraph, that definitely changes the game from a testing perspective, and there's a reason why that changes, because with a polygraph, that is a direct implication that they are testing for prior usage
Yeah.
and looking to have a standard for what is designated or defined as natural, right? That's directly what that polygraph would be testing for. So I'm curious, he didn't say on the podcast what the standard would be, but what will the standard be um, for what defines someone as natural? Is it natural for 1 year? Is it natural for 5 years? Is it natural for 10 years?
Yep.
What's the standard? So that's what the polygraph is likely going to test for, because that's what it does beyond what the urinalysis can catch, clean on the day, right? Urinalysis
Yep.
catches clean on the day. Polygraph, is an assessment of previous usage, right? So I'm curious to see what that is, what that means and how that's assessed. And like I said, I mean, this is kind of a direct implication that, hey, this is a change in the guard for the NPC and how they've approached the natural side of things. And like
Yep.
I said, in past, and like you've seen NPC, CPA, their natural shows. There's been, like I said, there's been some sketchy stuff and some really questionable athletes and questions in regards to what they define as natural. But this looks like they're looking to change how they define it. So
Yeah. Yeah, like up here, so like the CPA is the Canadian affiliate, Canadian equivalent, I guess, to the NPC. And they do test. I've been at shows where they've tested
yeah,
athletes, but typically, it's overall winners, right? So it's a small percentage of the total athlete pool that's in the show, right? Like, it's not uncommon for some of our regional shows up here to 150, 200 athletes, and if you're testing 8 or 9 overall winners, it's not. And we don't say this to point fingers at people cheating, because the vast majority do not. Let's be honest.
correct.
This is to try to further legitimize a show being natural for everybody, right? Because you know most athletes going to a natural show, especially at the regional level, they're not probably trying to cheat. Let's be honest. It's a
Yeah,
small handful of people. But when you get higher up, and we saw this last year with our Canadian nationals, the natural pro qualifier that hands out IFBB pro cards to the overall winner. And there was people that were in that show, that were competing in that show, that myself and many other coaches, many other athletes locally know for a fact they'd used stuff even earlier in the year, but
yeah,
they would test clean on the day. So by the current standard, you are natural, which is not true. And anytime I've brought this kind of stuff up on either my page or Natty News, where it's like, please, can you give me your definition of natural, right? Is it lifetime? Is it 10 years? Is it 5 years? Or is it clean on the day? The overwhelming majority of people say like lifetime natural is what I define as natural. And that's, I think, one of the biggest heartbreakers with this kind of stuff, is that like you have the vast majority of people competing in these shows under the assumption, because I haven't taken anything, no one else has either. But there's those select people that, because
yeah,
they know that they're not going to test positive, they're going to be able to skirt through the system because, unless you're winning the overall, you probably won't get tested anyways. And even if you do, you've probably got it out of your system. So you're going to pass regardless. So that kind of stuff, how do you prevent that? And that's where the subject of, well, maybe a polygraph is the solution. And, does it have its flaws? For sure, but it's probably going to deter that small group of people that, if they are enhanced, are likely taking spots away from people that are lifetime natural or have been enhanced, maybe not enhanced at the current time, but the polygraph is able to just be like, look, what have you taken in the last X period of time? And this is something that we still don't know, like Dan, you mentioned, where it's like, well, for the NPC, for the Ben Weiders, like, what's that time frame going to look like?
Yeah.
Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 2 years? What is that? And anytime I've talked to people since we posted this, the general minimum seems to be 5 years. That seems to be what people could genuinely get behind and say, like, okay, if you're going to polygraph and you're going to say, okay, have you taken any banned substances the last 5 years? Yes or no? The community, the natural community, seems to say that 5 years is something that they could be like, okay, I'm cool with that. Now, we know some organizations say 10 years, and like, obviously that dates it back even further. But if the NPC, if the Ben Weiders were to go, all right, we're going to polygraph and we're going to say 5 years is that cutoff. You, Dan, as an athlete, are you cool with that? Would you be able to get behind the 5 year rule?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like the 10-year rule. I would like a lifetime rule, but 5 years I think is I'd say good enough,
Yeah.
from my perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
What about
tough.
you?
Like, the lifetime is tough, right? Because, like, I'm sure there's athletes out there that made a stupid decision when they were in their senior year of high school football, right? They're like, I'm going to do a
Yeah,
cycle test. And then they get through that cycle, or they do it for a couple weeks and they're like, this isn't for me. So then you say, okay, lifetime drug free. And it's like, man, like, I'm 30 now. I took it when I was 17 for 3 weeks, but now I can't compete. I think that's extreme. And
yeah,
that's where the lifetime rule probably has its biggest flaw, is that shit happens. People make mistakes, especially when they're younger. And, fast forward 10 or 15 years to look at that individual and say, like, look, man, like, you can't compete because, you took some tests in college. He's like, fuck, like, that sucks. You know what I mean? So then you throw that
yeah,
athlete who is by all intents and purposes natural, you throw him in open shows now for the rest of his competitive career because, he made that decision. So lifetime, I think, is extreme, even though in a perfect world, like, guys like you and I that have never touched anything, would we love for that to be probably the gold standard? For sure. I just think it's a hard sell. 10 years is obviously great. I think that is probably, if we were to say, like, okay, what's the sweet spot then if we can't go lifetime? I think 10 years is probably a nice spot. Um, but with that being said, I wouldn't turn my nose up at 5 years, because even
yeah,
5 years for many athletes, if they're taking a cycle, if they're going hard, a lot of that has probably dissipated over that period of time. Like, would they have some muscle retention? Potentially, but I don't think it would be enough that you get good natural athletes up there, like that guy that took some stuff 5 years ago. Like, the good natural athletes are going to give them a run anyways. I really do believe that. Um, and especially in smaller, like, less muscular divisions, it probably matters even less. You know what I mean? Like, if you get bikini
yeah,
athletes that did Anavar 5 years ago just to get leaner, it's probably negligible come that 5 year time period is up. Um,
yeah,
in open bodybuilding, like, maybe, you get those kind of, like, hyper responders, but again, like, we're probably talking about a smaller percentage than most that's going to be on the stage anyways. But I think it gives an opportunity to really kind of push those people aside that have tried to sneak their way through the system. There's a guy that won his pro card up here, I think 2 years ago now, who openly acknowledged to taking stuff just a year or two prior. And he has since competed at the Ben Weiders as a IFBB pro, as a natural IFBB pro, and has won. But again, has openly acknowledged taking stuff prior to winning his pro card, and then ideally hasn't taken anything between that pro card win and the Ben Weiders. But again, that's where just urine testing has its flaws, because who's to say that an athlete could pass pass a urine test to win a pro card, take some stuff before their pro debut, and then pass the urine test again when they do their pro debut, should they be tested, right? So I think the poly is probably remedying a lot of those things, which is only a positive, I believe. One thing that's interesting that I think you touched on, Dan, when we were in our conversation the other day, was that it didn't sound like they were going to be polygraphing every show. It sounds like it's probably going to be just the big ones, which again, I mean, at the regional level or the state level or whatever it would be for the NPC, like, is someone going to cheat to win a regional show only to get dinged when they do the Ben Weiders? You know what I mean? Because you're assuming people want to work their way up the ranks, and at the end of the day, you would be under the assumption that most, if not all, people within the NPC are trying to get an IFBB Pro card. So the athlete that's on stuff passes the passes the urine test at the regional level, in theory, because they're going to get polygraphed at the Ben Weiders, they're pooched anyways because they're not going to pass because they've So I don't think them goddamn. I don't think them just testing the big shows is a bad thing, because I think that's where it matters most. Dying over here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where it's most pressing, to make sure that you're testing it at the big shows, and testing, like, especially pro card winners, and then people who win prize money, right? So yeah.
Especially too, because
they're
offering pro cards to top 2 in the overall now. So you want to make sure that those individuals are passing both forms of testing to legitimize their natural status even more. And especially if they're going to go on to the Olympia as a natural athlete, what you do after that is your decision. But if you're going to, win a IFBB Pro card, compete to potentially win money, move on to the Olympia, like, all right, well, you need to pass these tests, because those are spots that are coveted by hundreds of thousands of athletes.
Yeah. You need to, especially at those, for those coveted positions. And I agree. That's where it's most pressing. Have they made any allusions to the drug-free period, 5 years? Is that something that you've heard rumblings of, or you just
no? So I haven't seen anything yet. I just saw that they posted just this morning, maybe, about the IFBB Pro card for the top 2s, but I have not heard anything yet with regards to kind of that duration that you need to be natural for. But in that podcast we listened to with Ron Hash there a month or two ago now, he talked about that, where they're trying to figure out what that timeline might look like. And I think he did mention on there, like, referencing other organizations that honor, that 10-year, 7 to 10 year window. So, it sounds like it's going to be at least a multi-year period, not just like a 1 year or a 2 year. It would be nice to see them kind of push that further. Like we said earlier, like even a 5-year cap, I think, is probably going to get most people to kind of sign off on that and be like, you know what, I appreciate that, right? So
I think the 5-year would but it's gonna be interesting, because I think Tyler Mannion mentioned about 25 or 30 shows that are gonna be rolled out throughout the United States. And
he said he wants one. It sounds like he wants a regional in every state. It sounds like they want to make the Ben Weiders like the natural equivalent to
the
premier event. So it sounds like you would have a regional in every state, and then it sounds like pro shows as well, or pro qualifiers, he said. So it sounds like you might need to do, which I think is great. I think more tiers to qualify through, the better, because it's only going to make the standard at the highest level shows even better. But if you have your regional qualifier that you have to do in whatever state you're in, then you have a pro qualifier, which would then probably 3 or 4 events across the country, and then you qualify in those to the Ben Weiders. I think that's probably that's cool. We used to do that in Canada, where you had like a regional, a provincial, and then national. So you had 3 tiers to climb. And I think it just made the quality so much better because, you get those small shows, right? Where, people place when, if it was a tougher show, they wouldn't be placing. So then they move on to the higher levels, and it just kind of dilutes the waters a little bit with regards to like athlete quality at those top shows. But if you then make it, you got to climb 2 or 3 rungs up the ladder before you actually get in a position to qualify or compete for your IFBB Pro card or whatever at the Ben Weiders, and you've got to pass testing along the way. Like, it only legitimizes things even more.
Yeah, I think establishing that legitimacy is something that, that if the NPC really wants to make their mark here, that's I think where they need to do it. And I'm interested to see what happens. You know, what's does this just create, quote unquote, another organization to compete in? Does this overtake everything? Does this make the WNBF and OCB and all these organizations step their game up? Does it kill them? Does it hurt them substantially? Do you end up with the NPC and like 2 other natural orgs, or where does this go? I'm curious. And I know a lot of natural athletes are not happy about this. Just from where they stand, where the NPC stands from intentions in terms of why they're introducing natural shows. I think there's a speculation that it's mostly money driven, business driven, which I personally don't really have a problem with, because it's like, if there's demand, there's money. It's a dual thing. Like, if people want it, that means they're going to willing to pay for it. So that means there's quote unquote value there. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting year, because they've obviously been running natural shows for quite a while, but not to the same extent or seeming potential legitimacy that looks like this year is going to be. So I think it's going to shake things up.
It's very interesting because here in Canada, like our natural CPA shows, like they don't uncommonly double registration to the untested shows. So you clearly see the demand there, right? Like, people want it.
I think it is there. I mean, and the funny thing is that I mean, there are obviously a lot of natural athletes out there. I mean, the demand at the CPA show dictates, but like you talk around at gyms and around, you meet people. I'm sure you've met people, and you start talking about like where to compete. There, sometimes they'll talk about competing, and they're like, "Oh, I'm natural," like, and then you start saying like WNBF, OCB, like, what are those? Like, I've never even heard of those.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And it's like, a lot of people don't even know these other organizations are out there, but they know about the NPC IFBB. So, does bringing in some level of knowledge and general baseline understanding of that there is an outlet to compete as a natural. I think that changes a lot of things. Because I really think the demand there for natural bodybuilding is big. I think there is a demand for natural bodybuilding. I mean, anytime we post about stuff like this, obviously our page is a testament to that, with how many people are interested in natural bodybuilding. But like, I mean, I looked through the comment section of that Connie Rambod video, and a lot of people were excited. Like, oh, NPC natural, I'm excited. Like, I'm going to compete, or like, I'm excited to see that. Like, and like I said, you talk to people around, it's like there are a lot of natural athletes that kind of want a place to compete, but they want somewhere legitimate. And I think it's there. And I mean, there's just a lot of talk in social media about natural bodybuilding and what is natural, the natty or not stuff. Like, there's a lot of buzz around it. So I think it's there. It's just but it's it'll be interesting to see what the NPC is able to tap into, because I think I could be wrong. If they do it right, they'll be able to tap into something that has not been tapped before. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
we're gonna do our best to keep everybody up to date. Anything that you guys see or you guys want us to talk about or share with regards to this topic or anything else, just tag us on Natty News or tag our personal accounts, whether it be mine, James, or Dan. We'll try to keep up to things as best we can, and just kind of keep this Natty News thing going, man. Let's go. We're on a roll.
Yeah, and I would love to get someone from the NPC, directly to talk directly
Yeah,
about this, to
100%.
hear it directly from their mouth, as the and to voice a lot of the concerns that we have, and that a lot of other people's have, since we have a decent pulse on the natural community at this point in time, I think. So,
Yep.
if anyone from the NPC or IFBB listens to this, please reach out, because we would love to talk. So
Yeah, 100%. All right, people. Well, if you guys enjoyed this little impromptu podcast / news video, obviously you know what to do. Let us know. Give us a like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram at natty_news_daily, and we'll see you guys in the next one.